Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm Nate Eaton coming to you from Phoenix. Had a great weekend, quick weekend home, obviously. Flew out Friday night, made my plane. The flight was actually delayed 20 minutes, so that helped me. And had a fun weekend with the family. Hope you had a great weekend. It's my daughter's birthday today, Emmy, so she's getting a big shout out at the end. I also want to shout out several of you. Let me know where you're watching from and if you have any questions. We have so much to talk about today. I know court was not in session today. Obviously, it's the weekend, but Friday was such a big day that I held most of the main stuff for tonight. So we're going to do a deep dive. If you missed Friday, even if you watched Friday court, I'm going to go through and kind of pick out some highlights that I thought were pretty important, pretty significant stuff as Lori Daybell cross-examined Brandon, her former nephew-in-law. It was something, that is for sure. We're going to talk about that. Ring camera video, excuse me, a neighbor the morning of the shooting, the attempted death, murder of Brandon Boudreaux, had a ring camera that was on. I'll show it to you. They played it in court. Also, I mentioned Lori cross-examining Brandon. We're going to talk about rules 404 and 405. So many of you have messaged me asking, what does this mean? To be honest, I did not know what any of this meant until Lori's first trial in Idaho, when 404B was such a hot topic there. It's being brought up again in this trial. I'll try to explain it to you as best I can so that you know what they're talking about when they throw out these legal numbers, terms, rules, and whatnot. Also, we have a t-shirt giveaway, which jumped out of order there in my graphics. But one of the big headlines that came out of the testimony on Friday was Trina K confirming on the record that Melanie Boudreaux is still under investigation. Melanie Pulowski, I should say. Brandon's ex-wife has never been charged, but we know now that she is under investigation. Now, what does that mean? Will she be charged? Will she not? I don't know. They might know. They might wait to see the outcome of this trial. We'll talk about that. Also, we have a special shout out, as I mentioned, and then I want to get to as many questions as I can. And I have a really fun photo that I've been dying to show you all weekend. I didn't put it on my social media because I saved it for you here on Courtroom Insider. I think you're gonna like it. It definitely made me smile on Friday and when I got it, and I'm gonna show it to you. Okay, let's jump into the Ring camera. Now think back, this attempted shooting happened in October of 2019. A lot has changed since then as far as technology and cameras. More and more people now have doorbell cameras and security cameras. And I think if this attempted shooting were to happen today, tomorrow, you would have a lot more video to come forward. Police, after Brandon got home and was shot at, went door to door asking people if they had any video camera footage of the shooting. They found one woman who did. She had a Ring camera and it was rolling and it caught the shoot. You hear the shot, and then it also caught Brandon's car in the corner. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play this for you. I might play it twice. You could take a look at your screen. You can hear the shooting. This was the morning of, right when Brandon turned the corner. You can kind of see in the corner. I'll stop talking and show you the video, and hopefully it makes sense. Okay, so that was the shot. Now, if I rewind it, and Trina K had to do this to point it out to the jury. One moment here. You look right there. You see the car? Right there. I'm circling it. Can you see my mouse? There's the black car, Brandon's car. So he goes, and then seconds later, it's like when he turned the corner, you hear the shot. That's all that she caught on video. That's all her camera caught on video. She did testify. She confirmed it was her video and went back and saw it. And, you know, those cameras can be finicky where sometimes they catch action in front of your house and sometimes they don't. Our cameras go off all the time at random places. In fact, yesterday when I was home last night, I caught 2 doorbell ditchers thanks to our cameras. I know who they are. I haven't confronted them. They were some boys looking for my daughter. It's already starting. Anyway, that's the footage that was shown in court. So next we went up to That witness testified it was a short testimony. Lori did not have any questions for her on cross-examination. But we started out with Lori taking the stand. First time she's spoken to Brandon, likely, I think, since that text message that he sent her in June of 2019 asking, why are you in the middle of my marriage and all of that. She begins by addressing him as Mr. Boudreaux, and then starts to ask questions about her relationship with him and their family relationships. Here's how the testimony started.
Mr. Boudreaux, you and I met in 2009, is that correct?
I believe we met in 2008.
Okay. Before you got married, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you got married in 2009, is that correct?
I believe I was married October 31st, 2008.
Okay. But that's when we met, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So we've known each other a long time, is that correct?
A long time can mean a lot of different things.
Since 2008.
Correct.
Okay. And we had a familial connection, is that correct?
Yes.
And we always had a friendly relationship, you and I, is that correct?
I wouldn't say always.
Okay. Until what time?
Until probably end of 2018.
Okay. And we spent many holidays together.
We did.
And you and Melanie were married a little over 10 years, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I was there at your wedding, is that correct?
Correct.
And I came to Utah to help you when your first child was born, is that correct?
I'm going to object to relevance.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Correct.
And I was there when your second child was born, is that correct?
You were not present when my child was born, but
Well, I came to help and watched Braxy, so I was there.
you visited you were with my family, correct?
Okay. And I flew in from Hawaii when Blake was born to help with the kids, and I watched them while you and Melanie were at the hospital, is that correct?
Object again to character evidence.
Sustain.
And I did watch the kids when Breezy was born as well, is that
Your Honor,
correct?
I'm going to object and ask
Sustained.
to go into 405 soon.
And we went on vacations together, you and I, is that correct?
Gonna-
Ms. Vallow, okay, move on to relevant information, okay? You've established you have a relationship with him that's close family relationship since 2008. So, go ahead.
And you came to visit me in Hawaii a few times, is that correct?
And Your Honor, I'm going to object.
I'm just asking in the sense that it was him coming to me.
All right,
There's things that happened there that I'm going to.
approach.
Okay.
Okay, so he tells Lori to approach. She's getting into all this personal stuff that obviously Trina K objected to. Now, we heard Trina K talk about 404B, 404, 405, those rules. I want to get to that in a minute, but after they had the approach at the bench, I'm sure the judge told her, remember, the jury's in the courtroom at this time. So the judge tries to keep things flowing as smoothly as possible. He doesn't want drama. He doesn't want dust-ups. When Lori was taken out the other day, the jury was not in there. That can obviously affect their ability if they're like, there's a defendant who's unhinged over there. And I think this judge is doing a good job at, gathering her. He also can't give her legal advice. He's also got to keep her in line, but he has given her suggestions at time. He's a former defense attorney, by the way, Judge Boreski. I'm imagining in his mind, he's thinking, how would I defend this case? But he's telling her, listen, you got to keep in line with the questions. I don't know if it did much good because Lori came straight back to those type of questionings and talked about arguments. Well, here's what happened next.
You and I had never had an argument with each other, is that correct?
That's not correct.
Okay, when did we ever have an argument, you and I?
I'm going to object to relevance. If there's something specific about that, are we talking in 10 years?
I'll overrule it. You can answer.
The most recent argument that I would say we have is when I was texting you in June.
That was June 25th, 2019. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And had you been upset with me before that time?
Are you talking about ever in our lives?
Yeah.
I'm sure we're all human. I'm sure there was times I was upset with you.
Is there something specific that you were upset with me about before the June 25th text messages?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevance if there's something more specific.
Sustained.
Were you upset with me about Juice Island?
And I'm going to object as to relevance and 404.
Sustained.
Brandon, you had mentioned before that Melanie and I were close. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were aware that I loved Melanie. Is that correct?
I can't say if you loved her or not.
But you saw that over the 10 years that you were married to her, right? You witnessed it with your own eyes.
What is it you're asking that I witnessed?
Me loving Melanie.
As I said, I can't state what you did or did not feel. I can't say what you felt.
But I acted in a way that was loving towards her, as far as you knew.
I'm going to object again to relevance, 404 and 405 character evidence.
Sustained.
So we were all together as a family frequently, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there were times when we were at your house as well as my house, is that correct?
An objection to relevance.
Sustained.
And until you sent me that text message on June 25th that we read yesterday, you and I had never had any disagreements with each other. Is that correct?
I would not agree with that statement.
You and I had ever had an argument?
Can you ask that question again?
Did you and I ever have an argument?
And again, as to foundation of when,
I'll allow him to answer. You can answer.
I'm sure we had, I don't know how you would define argument, but disagreements.
Face to face, you and I? Before the June 25th?
Hold on.
That's all I'm asking. Just before
Okay,
that.
maybe rephrase it.
So by the time we met in 2008 until June 25th, 2019, did you and I ever have an argument?
Is there something you're looking for that you're trying to specify? And I'm not sure I can, that's a broad question that I can't think of a specific time where we argued face to face, if that's what you're looking for.
Correct. So you and I have never had an argument in our lifetimes.
I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that there have for sure been disagreements between us, but I can't think of a specific time that I could share where me and you face to face argued. I'm not a confrontational person.
Okay. You've known me for all these years. Am I a confrontational person?
and I'm going to object to character evidence under 404 and 405.
Sustained.
Sustained. You could tell the judge is getting annoyed. So what's all this 404, 405 talk? Many international viewers have messaged me asking what in the world they're talking about. Let's jump straight to the rules. Rule 404, character evidence is not admissible to prove conduct. 404B specifically, you cannot admit character evidence to prove conduct and then concerning other crimes, wrongs, or acts. 1, prohibited except as provided in Rule 404C, which we'll talk about in a minute. Evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts is not admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show action in conformity therewith. 2, permitted uses. This evidence may, however, be admissible for other purposes, such as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake or accident. So what it's saying is you cannot admit character evidence. They were such a good person. This is why it opened the door for Lori in her opening. She said she's a loving person who's kind to everyone and wants peace and love for everyone. She's starting to talk about her character, which is not admissible. If she opened that door a little bit, the prosecutor can come back and say, okay, you're saying that that's your evidence, even though in opening arguments, it's not evidence. Opening statements is not evidence. But the prosecutor can come back and say, well, she said this in her opening statement. We could say this in our closing argument. What loving, kind person murders their children, the new spouse of the spouse of their new wife and their husband? That's not really loving and kind. So you cannot reduce that as character evidence. Lori continually, when she's asking Brandon, is, you knew that we never argued, right? You knew that I was a person who didn't like confrontation, right? Prosecutors objecting, saying she's talking about her character. We can't have her character be brought in. There are some exceptions. Now, here's what the rest of the rule says. Character evidence is not admissible to prove conduct, but 3, notice in a criminal case, in all criminal cases in which the state intends to offer evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts under Rule 404B, the state must A, make disclosure to the defendant as to such acts as required by the rule, so no later than 45 days before the final trial setting or at such later time as the court may allow for good cause, and 2, articulate in the disclosure the permitted purpose for which the state intends to offer the evidence and the reasoning that supports the purpose. The defendant must make disclosure as to rebuttal evidence pertaining to such acts as required by the rule no later than 20 days after receipt of the state's disclosure or at such time such as the court may allow for good cause. There is an exception, and it's character evidence in sexual misconduct cases. In sexual misconduct cases, the rules are different. The rules change, and some of that can be admitted. So what the rule is saying is that if the state says, you know what, we are going to admit her character evidence 404B, we are going to talk about it, in criminal cases in which there's been other crimes committed, there's been other acts or wrongdoings committed, then they have to give notice to the court and the defendant can rebut it. Trina K, in this case, originally did say they intended to bring in 404B, the Idaho stuff and the Charles Vallow stuff. Then she withdrew it. So she's given notice to the court saying they don't intend to use that. In Idaho, they did. In Idaho, the state filed a motion for 404B saying, we intend to bring in the facts that Charles Vallow was killed and the fact that Brandon Boudreaux was shot at, and we're going to get into that. They submitted it to the judge. He said, well, not all of it can be admitted. You need to tweak it or narrow it down a little bit, and therefore they narrowed it down a little bit, and the judge did allow it in, 404B. Whenever it was brought up, Lori's defense attorneys opposed it. They objected to it. They said, we're objecting based on 404B. They didn't even question the witnesses or anything. Now, on a side note, Lori Vallow Daybell's appeal was filed last week. I have a separate video on our YouTube channel going through the whole appeal, and that is an issue that was brought up. You can watch that. Don't go now. When we're done here, go watch it, and then you can see the one through the appeal. So I hope that makes sense as far as what the 404 stuff is, the rules of law when it comes to it. The reason Trina K keeps saying she's violating 404, she's talking about her character, she's opening the door. If she opens the door, it's going to get bigger. And we'll get to more of what she said in a minute about this with her character and other stuff with the testimony. But for now, let's keep going. Brandon talked about this argument that he and Melanie got into on June 25th of 2019. Before then, he thought his marriage, never thought about getting a divorce or anything. But this marriage or this argument lasted for hours, he said. Melanie asked for a divorce, and it all stemmed from the fact that Brandon's grandfather, unexpectedly died of a heart attack, and she did not want to go to the funeral, and he just couldn't understand why she would not want to go to the funeral.
And you had mentioned that this argument started as a result of Melanie not wanting to attend your grandfather's funeral. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you were aware that Melanie had trauma with all funerals because her mother passed away when she was 9. Is that correct?
Object to relevance.
I'll overrule the objection. He can answer if he knows the answer.
I can't say why Melanie was feeling the way she was feeling. I'm not Melanie.
But you know she had a issue with funerals before your grandfather passed away.
As I said, I'm not Melanie. I can't say what she had an issue with or not.
But you're aware that her mother passed away when she was 9, right?
Yes, I'm aware her mother passed away.
And that she had to go to the funeral.
I'm going to object to relevance.
I'll sustain it at this point. Go ahead. Next question.
But she's your wife of 10 years, so you knew that about her. Is that correct?
And again, I'm going to object to relevance, the same
Sustain.
question.
It's completely understandable that you would want your wife at your side at your grandfather's funeral. So a disagreement between a couple would begin over that issue. That's not
Objection to
far-fetched, right?
testifying.
That's a statement. Can you, if you want to phrase it as a question, go ahead.
So your argument began because of this issue with not wanting to go to your grandfather's funeral. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was Melanie upset or crying at that point?
No, just me.
Okay.
Just him. It'd be interesting to go back, maybe one of you that has time, to hear the amount of minutes Lori spoke during the cross-examination and Brandon. Because a lot of it is her talking and Brandon waiting for an objection to clear or then answering in a short statement. I'll be honest, her questioning was all over the place. She repeated herself a lot. It was sometimes hard to follow. She asked Brandon if several topics were discussed during the argument. He said yes. She asked him for all the topics. He said, I can't remember all the topics. She was brought up because he said that Melanie looked at Lori like a mother, and she said, wouldn't it be common for a mother to be the focus of an argument? She asked about his divorce. Who filed it? He filed the divorce. They used a mediator. They met with the mediator. It was filed in mid-October, just a few weeks after he was shot at. So they would have been legally married when he was shot. They asked, Lori asked about when they moved out of the houses, when he met with Detective Pillar. Remember in her opening statement, she said she was going to prove that there was a conspiracy between Detective Pillar and Brandon. I don't think it got there in her cross-examination. She asked about Brandon being gay. Well, this whole topic came up and it was talked about a few times. And there was apparently some video that of Brandon at a steakhouse or something with a friend that Lori was fixated on. And she really wanted to get this video, get him to address this video. And here is how that went.
I did specifically say that I thought you.
That I had convinced her.
Can you ask that
That I
question?
had convinced Melanie that you were gay.
I said that I specifically thought that you had been involved in convincing her that I'm gay. Yes, correct.
Okay. And so she did not show you herself a video of you dancing at the Pink Pony.
Object
Is that
again, Your
correct?
Honor, to relevance to 404B.
Sustain. It's all sustained.
And what was your understanding of how I convinced Melanie of this accusation?
We have speculation.
Can we sidebar?
Okay, so again, the judge is losing patience. He's sustaining these objections and she keeps going with it. I want to go back. Some of you had a question about what the juice, what they say, the juice bar is, what Lori said about juice island. That was the business that she and Charles moved over to Hawaii to start. So she was trying to reference that Charles was upset that they were going to start, or that Brandon was upset that they were going to start Juice Island. That's what Juice Island is. Okay, so they talk. And then the judge sends the jury out. It's time for a break. And then the judge needs to go on the record to talk about what happened at the sidebar. Many of you are saying, why is he holding sidebars with her at the bench rather than on the headphones? I thought they were supposed to do the headphones. I honestly think it's just for convenience. I think it's like, just get up here. Let's get this done. It's going to be a short sidebar. When they're on the headphones, the reporter's on the headphones. But when they meet at the bench, the reporter is not there, the court reporter. That's why the judge then has to go on the record and talk about what was said. And then the most memorable moment of this trial, and perhaps all of the Lori Vallow trials, happened. I don't know if we will have a more memorable moment that will be played in documentaries and in 20 years that we'll be talking about when I'm old and sitting on a porch and we're still doing Courtroom Insider. And I'm like, remember that time when Lori was sent out? In case you missed it, here is what happened.
We've concluded that sidebar, a record's been made. I would just caution the defendant, again, she needs to be very careful, and she's getting into areas that could open a huge door that I don't think she wants open. I'm going to make another record at 10:24 to 10:25. We held a sidebar that I don't think made it onto the court record. That sidebar, again, discussed similar issues of if the defendant brings in evidence or testimony that she was a good person and no ill intent and those sorts of things, and specific acts of her being a good person, it could open the door to other things that she may not want the door open to. The state, the defendant, and advisory council were at the bench when we had that short 1 minute sidebar, but I don't know if anyone wants to supplement the record on that. Ms. Kay?
Just, Your Honor, that again, the state did raise any issue of character evidence under 404A and 405, that if the defendant opens the door and tries to advise that she's a good person, a peaceful person, a kind person, a loving person, any of those other types of things, that we believe that would allow us under 405 to then bring in specific acts such as the murder of her children, her husband, and her current husband's wife.
All right.
Which would also be 404B that they withdrew.
And that would be 405.
Yeah, they withdrew it, but if you bring up 404 that you...
Then all 404B is in, or do we get a hearing on what 404B can come in? If I open the door, do I get a hearing? We stop trial and I get a hearing on...
Stop. We'll have a very short hearing, okay? If you're going to introduce how you have great character and good character, we're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could include being convicted of 4 murders. So
And would you
talk
like...
to your advisory council during the break. And
You don't need to yell at me either.
yelling at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm
Take
very
her out.
courteous.
Take her out.
I'm very courteous to you.
Take her out. No, you have been nothing near courteous to me during the course of these proceedings. Talk with your advisory council about the rest of your cross. We're going to resume in 15 minutes.
All rise.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have a moment that beats that, but it's only Sunday. We could have something tomorrow. I don't know. I did not foresee that coming. For what it is worth, when Lori came back into the courtroom, she did apologize. And here is the admonishment that the judge gave her.
The parties are present, the jury is not present. Ms. Daybell, if you continue to ask lines of questions where I've sustained an objection, into areas where I've sustained an objection, if you continue to speak over me or the prosecutor when it's not your turn to speak, I will give you a chance to speak and make any record that's made. If you continue to do all these things, I may be forced to revoke your pro per status.
I understand, Your Honor. I apologize.
Okay, so you got to hand it to her. She did apologize. And I would say that after that break, her questioning did improve slightly, perhaps. Many said it didn't improve at all, but I think it was a little bit more focused, or a little bit more on par, I guess you could say. Depends on what you think. The questioning continued about the marriage issues, about the argument, about Melanie going to the temple, the divorce, the back and forth. And then Lori started to refer to transcripts. Brandon, of course, had done interviews with the police that were brought up. And I would assume, I don't know this, but I would assume that he was a witness in the grand jury proceedings. And I can tell you that on Friday, one of the grand jurors came to court and sat in the audience near me, and she helped indict Lori Vallow Daybell. She wanted to come back and be there for part of the trial. And that's all I'll say about that. But that was fascinating. This woman has known a lot of this. A grand jury, for those wondering, what is a grand jury? That's another legal thing. A grand jury is a kind of a loosely organized group. You can get served, you can get a letter. My dad actually was sent a letter to be on a grand jury, a federal grand jury. And what it was for 6 months, he was going to be on call to be a grand juror. Some counties in America, like every Monday, the grand jury will meet. So in this case, grand jury proceedings in all cases are private, very confidential. You have no idea they're meeting. In Idaho, we got tipped off that the grand jury was meeting, and I was there outside the courthouse and saw people coming and going. I didn't report on it other than the grand jury was likely meeting. And what happens is the prosecutor goes in and presents all their evidence, or some of their evidence, enough evidence with witnesses. It's like a preview trial. There's no defense attorney, there's no judge. The prosecutor presents all this stuff to the grand jury, and then the grand jury can say, yeah, there's enough evidence here to indict. That's what happened here, and that's what happened in Idaho. So one of those grand jurors came the other day. And Lori referred to transcripts of interviews that Brandon had done previously, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever. Obviously, our memories fade over the years. And so she would ask him questions that he didn't quite remember. And so she would bring up the transcript, have her advisory attorney bring up the transcript to refresh his memory. Then the whole topic of him being gay came up again. And what happened at the time is Charles apparently had warned Brandon that Lori was telling Melanie, or they were talking, that they believed Brandon was gay. Thus, that was probably one of the reasons that Melanie said she wanted a divorce. Here is how that topic resurfaced again during cross-examination.
Did you get information from Melanie that I convinced her that you are gay?
I inferred from conversations that I had with her that you were the one convincing her that I was
You
gay.
inferred from conversations?
Correct.
Okay. But she did not convey to you, Lori's the one that convinced me, and I know this now to be a fact because Lori is the one that convinced me of this.
She never said those words to me, no.
Okay. And she showed you a video that she found on Facebook.
I'm going to object
I'm not going to say.
again to 404B evidence, to extrinsic evidence, to relevance, to 403 evidence.
Okay, sustained. We're not talking about the video.
But she had her own reasons that she personally believed these things that had nothing to do with me. Is that correct?
Asked and answered.
Well, I'm
And
also going to
relevance.
sustain the form of that question on Melanie's belief.
Melanie conveyed to you that she had several reasons why she had this, why she was making this accusation to you. Is that correct?
I can't say how many reasons she said. It's been a long time. But I mean, we discussed it at length for a while, and both parties shared their reasons why it was confusing.
All right, so that was brought up yet again. Lori went on to ask about the Jeep Wrangler, and Brandon originally told police that it was a puke green versus all puke green or olive green or gray. Turned out the Jeep was more gray. Lori was concerned because Brandon had shopped for, Brandon does insurance work, and so Charles had come to him before Charles died and said, can you get us a quote, get us a rate on car insurance for our vehicles? And one of the vehicles was the Jeep. And Brandon had the VIN number for that Jeep when he was shopping for the auto insurance. Lori asked if he had ever seen the Jeep before, and he didn't think he had. Here he is thinking, someone in this Jeep just shot at me. And Lori's asking him, had that Jeep ever been parked at his house? She really wanted to drill down on when Brandon had seen the Jeep and the knowledge that he had of the VIN number.
So before October 2nd, you were aware that there was a Jeep Wrangler in my household, is that correct?
Before October 2nd,
Yes.
I believe that at one point, Charles had called me to have me run VINs on all your vehicles because he was looking at insurance at the time. And so I did get the VIN for that vehicle.
Okay, so you knew the details of that vehicle prior to October 2nd, is that correct?
I had received them from him. I hadn't thought about it again.
Okay, but when he gave you those, did you look up the VIN numbers before October 2nd in doing that research for the insurance?
When he gave them to me, I used those numbers to run a report that would allow me to see what options he could have for insurance.
And in that research, were you made aware of the details of the Jeep?
I didn't dive into the details, no.
Okay, so were you aware at that time that it was like a 2-door Jeep or a 4-door Jeep, any of those kinds of details before October 2nd?
I can't honestly recall whether or not he told me. I don't know that I needed to know that or that it was something I was thinking about at all.
Okay.
All right, so there is the talk of the Jeep. My apologies, by the way. I had to turn on the air during that sound clip. It is so warm in this room. I normally try to keep the air off when I do these because it can mess with the mic. So if you're having a hard time hearing me, I apologize. Maybe I'll turn it off in a minute. I just didn't want to have you see me with sweaty armpits. So there you go. Lori went on to ask about a little boy who Brandon apparently... There was some confusion with Lori understanding that when Brandon was on the phone with 911, he said maybe there was kids shooting a paintball. And Lori asked about the paintball gun, very reminiscent of the Tammy Daybell, to be honest with you. And many of you have asked, did Alex use the same gun? This was 7 days before Tammy Daybell was shot at in her driveway. She also thought it was a paintball gun. I would not be surprised one bit if it was the same gun. He used the gun in Arizona, drove back to Idaho, used the gun in Idaho, and we know that it was likely because Tammy parked somewhere else that gun didn't fire because Alex had to run across the property, and likely when he was running, the pins in the gun got jostled about, and therefore they wouldn't shoot, and it sounded like a paintball gun. There was no paint on the car if it had been a paintball gun. But Brandon was worried, told police, well, maybe it was a paintball gun. He was second guessing, like maybe it was some kids doing something. He talked about how his friends came over, was with him, and then we got into this section about Detective Pillar, who is the case agent and the lead investigator. Brandon has emailed, texted, called Detective Pillar. He said he didn't know how many times over the past 6 years, as most of us would. If we're assigned a cop to work with us on a case, I would be checking in every other day. I get impatient. I want these things solved. And I'm sure Brandon was continually in touch with this detective. Lori wanted to know how often. And he said, I can't tell you. I can't give you a number. She said, more than 10, more than 100. He's like, I cannot give you a number. Then she pulled out an email that Pillar sent to Brandon. And in that email, this is where Lori, again, may have been opening a really big door. And you'll hear why right now. The judge sent the jury out to discuss this email, and here's how that conversation went. This is an email that Detective Pillar sent to Brandon.
So I've reviewed Exhibit 192. The line of your questioning was to establish that this witness has had contact with Detective Pillar over the years, in the last 5 years. This particular email is actually, appears to be 3 separate emails in a string from February 12th of 2020. So what's the purpose of this?
What is the purpose?
Yeah, are you trying to admit it? What do you?
I would like to ask him about it.
What's relevant about it?
A lot of things, Your Honor.
What?
Judge, I can't hear her.
Please speak into the mic.
It's relevant to his discussion with Detective Pillar from the October 2nd date until this date on February 12th.
What is relevant about it that is an issue for this jury to decide. That's what relevance means. It's something that this jury would either make something more or less probable for some fact that they need to decide.
It's relevant in the way that this email communicates that the information that was being given to the detectives was directly from Brandon Boudreaux.
I know, but what in the content of that email is relevant for this case?
The fact that the last line.
Did I miss something? What's the last line?
See that as well. I don't.
So
know what she's
the
talking
last
about.
line was Detective Pillar writes, is it Pillar or Pillar?
Pillar, like a pillar in a building.
Pillar.
sir.
Detective Pillar writes, this information is requested so we can see if Melanie has any financial gain from your death, basically, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that creates motive for Melanie. It seems like I guess it's fair area for him to talk about in general, but it's also a fair area for you to talk to the detective about what areas they investigated. But let me hear the state's response. But as far as that particular email comes in, I mean, I suppose you could ask some questions about it, but let me hear from the state.
Judge, obviously that's a conglomeration of emails, so I don't know that that fully covers everything. Two, I guess the defendant has never raised a third-party defense. I'm not sure if she's trying to say that this was all Melanie Boudreaux, but that is actually an open investigation that is still ongoing. The state has, obviously in trial, referred to her as an active member of this conspiracy. So I'm not sure if she's trying to admit that or just question him if he was providing information to the police. But the last thing I will, again, just in terms of opening the door, is she's made a big deal about the number of calls and text messages. And as I've indicated, there is still an open investigation against Melanie Boudreaux. And so many of that information might relate to that case, or it might also relate to the Tammy Daybell case, because there was information about that, as well as the Charles Vallow case. So to infer that all of those conversations related solely to this defendant, this incident, October 2nd, is probably a little disingenuous.
Were you intending to enter that as an exhibit or just were you asked to provide information that Melanie might have a motive?
I would like to admit it, and I would like to question him on it as well, yes.
What is the bait page on
It's
that?
Bates 5465.
I don't know that there's anything in it that's particularly misleading or anything like that to the jury. I don't know how relevant it is, but I think to the extent that there may have been some questions about Melanie's participation and whether or not she had a motive are relevant. What's the state's response, I guess? I know she didn't notice third-party defense.
I guess I'm asking now, is she doing that? Obviously, I have a right to know before the trial ends if that's an active defense she's asking for.
I am not, Your Honor. I'm trying to say the connection that I've been accused of with Melanie connects me to Melanie. So that's why I'm trying to establish how am I connected to this. I didn't have a financial gain here. This is the financial gain through Melanie. This is conversations between the detective and Brandon that I want to question him on. I'm not trying to blame Melanie. That's my point.
I have not alleged a financial gain for the defendant, so
What was that? I'm sorry.
said I have not alleged a financial gain. I've not alleged much of a motive because we are trying to keep out much of that. So I guess, again, if we're going to start going into motives, then we have prior incidents of the defendant having financial gain in the previous trial that we did here. So if we want to go into the whole overarching financial scheme and cult activities, then we can do that. But again, the state had decided not to bring in any of that. If we're going to do that, then obviously we'll change who all of our witnesses are.
Whoa, okay, there was a lot there. The jury was not there for that, remember. One, we learned that Melanie Boudreaux is still under investigation. Pulowski is still under investigation. She's a co-conspirator in the case. That Trina K did not bring in all the cult religious stuff, the Nephi, all that stuff. She left it out. That they didn't even bring up motive for this case, the financial behind it, about if Melanie got the money, could she share it with Chad and Lori, all of that. None of that, according to Trina, was going to come into play. But if Lori wanted to admit this email where Pillar sent to Brandon and said, could you have any documentation that proves Melanie would financially benefit with your death? I'm paraphrasing that line in the email. That opens a door. And in a way there, for a moment, it seemed like Lori was going to try to point the finger at Melanie. In fact, I kind of wonder if she still did, by saying, well, Melanie benefited financially off this, I didn't. And Trina K made the point that they were never served, that Lori Vallow Daybell intended to use third party as a defense by saying, it wasn't me, it was her. That was a pivotal 5 minutes there in the trial. We went to lunch. The judge came back. He did tell Lori that she could bring it up in a specific way, but told her the manner in which she could ask the question. I'm not going to play it for you now. You can go find it. She did ask the question. And then he told also Trina K the way that she could also respond to the question, which she did about it. But the jury is aware of Melanie. Lori asked about financial stuff. She talked about Detective Pillar taking Brandon's phone on October 2nd. He gave it willingly to the detective and they, searched the phone. Melanie was the beneficiary of his life insurance policy. They did have a life insurance policy. They brought up the fact about Tesla and cameras. Brandon's had an older version of a Tesla at the time. It was, it was a 2016 version. This was 2019. It did have cameras, but it didn't store the video footage. He then sold the footage, and then Lori asked the last question to Brandon, and here was the last question she asked Brandon. This may be the last time she ever speaks to him ever. This is what she said and how he answered.
When you were providing all of this information to Detective Pillar in regards to your relationship with Melanie, were you trying to have him charge Melanie with your murder?
Object to relevance.
Sustain.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Interesting last question. Were you trying to have Melanie charged with your murder? Trina K then got up to cross-examine Brandon. She talked about the argument on June 25th. He said it was a painful day. And she asked why it was so painful. And here is how Brandon responded.
Painful day.
Why was it a painful day? Why did that stick in your mind?
My grandfather was someone who was really important to me, and I was dealing with, sudden loss is traumatic. So I was dealing with that, and my family is the most important thing in this world to me. And so the dissolving of my family was probably one of the most painful things that I've gone through as a person. And that date is the start of the dissolving of my family.
Okay. So when you are talking with Melanie, was the focus of that argument about your marriage?
Yes.
And during that argument, did you and Melanie discuss issues within your marriage?
Yes.
And during that, did Melanie bring up reasons why the marriage was over?
Yes.
Did any of those reasons involve things that Melanie claimed you did to her aunt, Lori Vallow?
Yes.
So one of the reasons why the marriage was going to end was because of this defendant, Lori Vallow, things that she said you had done to her.
Yes.
Did that include the idea that you had hacked into Lori Vallow's computer?
Yes.
So that's something that Melanie was bringing up to you during this argument about the end of your marriage.
Yes.
Did the issue of you helping Charles Vallow try to take away Lori's Temple recommend also come up?
Yes.
So again, your marriage and reasons why it's ending tied to Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Is that why you sent those text messages to Lori about the temple recommend that you had nothing to do with trying to take that away?
Yes.
You told her that was a lie.
Yeah.
And that really solidified, clarified all in that little bite there, the case that Trina's trying to prove to the jury. If you can go back and watch, we've posted Brandon's entire testimony with Trina and then the cross-examination with Lori. We've posted it all there on East Idaho News on our YouTube channel. Would love to have you go watch it if you have a minute, because there's so much there. And again, I'm just trying to giving you bites, and we're nearly at an hour here. So those are kind of the key moments that I thought were interesting, and hopefully you did too. I have to thank newspapers.com. I got this sweet email. They're sponsoring us this trial around. I got this email from a woman. She said, I watched Courtroom Insider and have followed you from Hawaii. In January, I was on ancestry.com and I looked up my uncle on my father's side who was never talked about. And his name was mentioned in hushed tones. I looked his name up on newspapers.com and found articles. I found out he robbed a store with friends during the Depression. He was captured at 17 and was sent to the Indiana Reformatory in Pendleton. An older prisoner incarcerated there at the time was John Dillinger. A few months later, news articles said he escaped and there was a manhunt and he was captured again. He later was involved in stealing cars with more prison time. Another article stated he was living with a married woman. My dad, who had Alzheimer's in the early 2000s, was asked about his brother. He said he was a mobster in LA when he ran trucks. That was it. No other news articles were found. I met his uncle in the mid-60s when he showed up at a family Christmas party. I was 7. Isn't that fascinating? She looked up the uncle's name on newspapers.com and found all that out about her family history. That's just wild. Newspapers.com, they're sponsoring us. And for now, you get a 20% off if you go to newspapers.com/Nate all month of June. And they offer a 7-day free trial. Big thanks to newspapers.com for sponsoring us here on Courtroom Insider. Tomorrow, we're back in court. Brandon is back in court. It starts at 10:30 Phoenix time. So I'll start posting the live updates at that time. That's 11:30 Mountain. The video will begin 30 minutes later at noon. Go to East Idaho News YouTube, where you're probably watching this, and be sure you subscribe and hit the bell. You will be notified when we go live. We generally go live with the video around 11 o'clock Mountain time, which is 12 Central, 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific. And we just have a standby graphic up there, and you can watch it and enjoy it. And we appreciate you all. And you know who I appreciate and love? This little girl there in the middle. I can't believe it. 12 years ago today, little Miss Emmy entered the world, changed the world in the most beautiful way. There is me with Erica just minutes after our first baby made me a daddy. My favorite daughter, Emmy, joined our family. This was her this morning in bed. We made her breakfast in bed. It was blueberry pancakes with egg and raspberries, blueberries, and a little bit of whipped cream. She loves Jamba Juice. She's just fallen in love with Jamba Juice lately. So I got her a Jamba Juice gift card that she can go and get a Jamba this week. Someone said, Nate, you haven't aged. You're wearing the same t-shirt. I promise it's not the same t-shirt. That one, whoops, versus this one, not the same. But appreciate your concern. Emmy, happy birthday. I love you. I was able to go see her perform in Beetlejuice yesterday, and we had a really nice weekend. Quick weekend, but a nice weekend. Now, many of you are commenting on my shirts. This is a Peggy shirt. I come for the news, stay for the comments. Here, I'll set up, eastidahonews.com. We have these for sale. Remember last year we sold our mugshot shirt? It's life goal, keep my mug off eastidahonews.com. It blew up like nothing I've ever seen before. 3,000 of you bought one of those shirts. Unbeknownst to me, Keith Morrison from Dateline, his daughter, also bought a shirt for her dad. And one day I'm just scrolling along and I get a text with this photo. Keith Morrison in a mugshot shirt. Isn't that amazing? Well, I decided that, we have a new t-shirt line out now, and I needed to send him one of our new ones. And check this out. Keith Morrison. He is guilty of following eastidahonews.com. I like to think that right there at his computer, he's watching Courtroom Insider with all of you. Maybe he's in our comments, or maybe his daughter is. Big shout out to his daughter, Madeline, and to Keith. And if you want one of these amazing shirts that Keith Morrison is wearing, We have like 10 left on our East Idaho News website, but on our third-party site, we have a bunch, unlimited, and we ship anywhere in the world if you go to that third-party site, eastidahonews.com/shop, SHOP. Go there. You can watch it, you can order, and we'll get you your shirt. And we have a whole bunch of other shirts. And my thanks to Keith for being so incredibly awesome and supporting eastidahonews.com. I mentioned earlier that we have a video up where I'm talking about the appeal, Lori's appeal. Go there if you want to get caught up on that. I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time going through that because it's kind of a separate thing. Well, I mean, it's the Idaho appeal. So it is a separate case, but it's not tied to the Arizona case. Okay, we have some shout outs. Megan Fernston, happy birthday to her mom, Detective Donna in California. Thanks so much. You've become an expert. I love to hear that. Cameron Ballantyne was the original host at KWBH 91.1 at Rick's College. Hi, Cameron. Thanks for watching. Ashley Reese in South Africa. Gia Jensen in Sweden. Bless you. Shout out to Paul Sorensen, E. Todd, Roxanne Gretchen, and Eileen J. I think I met one of you the other day, Miss Eileen, I believe, who had one of the guilty shirts on at court. By the way, don't wear them into the courtroom, though. They'll make you turn them on inside out. You can't walk in the courtroom with a big shirt that says guilty. I'm telling you, Keith, if you show up at court, you got to change your shirt around, okay? Ruth V. from Michigan, thanks so much. Rachel, shout out to all the teachers. Just wrapped up another school year and you're exhausted. I don't blame you. And happy summer to you. Laura LaHog from Lafayette, Louisiana. Sherry Taylor from Tooele. Janice Leanhouts from Eagle, Idaho. Rachel says, Nate, you inspired me to buy my law students and assistants donuts today for National Donut Day and all your donut talk. Lawyer from Virginia. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the donuts. Oh, if you're in Virginia, I hope that you got country style down in Richmond. Best donuts, so good. We went as a family and got donuts on Saturday at Amazing Glazed in Idaho Falls. It's fairly new. We've never been. So good. They use real Idaho potatoes. Delicious. Anna Kungno from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you. And Joe in Kosovo or Serbia. He sent me the nicest email. He's I won't get into too much detail, but Joe, we're thinking about you. Thanks so much for watching overseas and being so wonderful there. I think I have a couple minutes for questions. Maybe I don't. I don't want to go too long here for tonight. I want to let you go back to your lives. And I just want to thank you so much for watching. Here's where you can follow me. I'm on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find me there. And big thanks to all of you that went on to Meet in the Eatons and subscribe the other day. We had a sudden explosion and we need to post more family stuff on there, I guess. So thank you again for watching. I'll start posting the updates tomorrow. Appreciate you following all along. And we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Courtroom Insider, giving you all the updates from day 3. I cannot believe we're only on day 3. It feels like we've been here for 3 weeks. It's only day 3 of the trial. Lori Vallow back in court. Lori Vallow Daybell back in court tomorrow. I'm Nate Eaton. Hope you have a good night. See you tomorrow.